And people would think that he had no enemies. He was so popular. He smiled. He appeared happy. Everyone loved him worldwide. But what people don't seem to understand is behind the scenes, he was making changes, and he was making them decisively, and he was taking some very, very daring steps. He was committed to pull out of Vietnam. By October, he had signed a document, an SAM 263, to that effect. 1,000 troops home by Christmas, and all personnel out of Vietnam by 1965. But that wasn't very good for the military-industrial complex. Is abolishing the Central Intelligence Agency, pulling their teeth, holding them to task, back to why they were originally created by Truman. Their original mandate by law is only to coordinate intelligence, not to create the Bay of Pigs. NSAM 55 told the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that the CIA no longer can do that, and any military operation has to come directly from them to the president, period. That kind of a document really causes problems.
Make a comment about something which a lot of folks haven't heard too much about. Did you know about this article by Arthur Kroc? Younger people are saying, who's Arthur Kroc? Arthur Kroc was the single most respected journalist in America in the 1960s. He wrote on the editorial page of the New York Times. He was very close to the Kennedys. In fact, Joseph Kennedy, John Kennedy's father's first book was ghostwritten by Arthur Kroc, and young John Kennedy, when he was a young man and worked on his thesis, Why England Slept, he wrote it in Arthur Kroc's Georgetown Library with the help of Arthur Kroc, and then Arthur Kroc had it turned into a book and got him a literary agent. That's how close he was. John Kennedy, when he wanted to speak to the American people, talked to Arthur Kroc, and Arthur Kroc would publish material. This is October 3rd, 1963, editorial page of the New York Times. Arthur Kroc's column called The Intra-Administration War in Vietnam. And Arthur Kroc is saying John Kennedy has declared war on the Central Intelligence Agency, and John Kennedy wants the American people to know there's some very serious problems. And then he goes on to say, twice, according to a high United States source, twice the CIA flatly refused to carry out instructions from Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge, that was Kennedy's ambassador to Vietnam. And in one instance, frustrated a plan of action Mr. Lodge brought from Washington, from John Kennedy, because the agency disagreed with it. You like that? The CIA disagreed with it. They don't do what the president says. Then it goes on. Listen to this. The CIA's growth was likened to a malignancy, which the very high official was not sure even the White House could control any longer. And listen to this. If the United States ever experiences an attempt at a coup to overthrow the government, it will come from the CIA. That's John Kennedy talking to the American people in October. The next month they blew his head off. And there's the Warren Commission, and they don't ask Arthur Kroc, where'd you get this information that John Kennedy was talking, or someone on his behalf was talking, to you about the CIA being possibly involved in a coup? If there was a coup, it would come from the CIA.
November the 22nd, 1963, Dallas, Texas. President John F. Kennedy has just been shot. His car is now heading at top speed for the Parkland Memorial Hospital. 6 minutes later, the stricken president is being worked on by a team of medics, desperate to revive him. At this stage, no one is sure whether he will live or die. January the 20th, 1961, Washington, D.C. Since being sworn in as U.S. President, aged just 43, Kennedy has made a great many friends. But he has also made a number of powerful and dangerous enemies. They all regard him as a threat and would be happy to see him dead. When Kennedy wins the election in November 1960 by the narrowest of margins, he's not only the youngest ever president, he's also the first Roman Catholic. This does not sit easily with the American Bible Belt, particularly in the southern states. Kennedy is also regarded as a liberal, something which does not go down well with the country's more traditional elements. But the white segregationists and ultra-right-wing conservatives in America's southern states. They're angered by Kennedy's enthusiastic backing of Martin Luther King, the civil rights leader, as well as his general support for the complete emancipation of black Americans.
Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
What's happening? Where am I?
I believe perhaps you understand now, pal, but you are afraid.
JFK. Hartman, what does this have to do with my house and my dog? Oh, okay, that's enough. I want to go home now.
This is the last president to stand up to the Fed. You must see. On June 4, 1963, President Kennedy signed Executive Order 11110. This executive order empowered the U.S. Treasury to issue real money without the Fed. It would have worked. Kennedy's plan to dismantle the Federal Reserve machine had begun. But 6 months later, John F. Kennedy went to Dallas and never returned.
No way. No way they could do that.
The new president, Lyndon Johnson, threw out Kennedy's order. And since JFK, no president has dared confront the secret powers behind the Federal Reserve. They consolidate bigger and bigger banks, print more and more money, accountable to no one, decimating our nation's wealth for the benefit of a few.
Why? Why do this? If they hurt us, it hurts the global bankers too.
No, pal. They are protected. They are too big to fail.
But I'm not. Those sons of
Sons of is all.
The Federal Reserve, America's banking system. The Fed was wrapped in conspiracy from the start. Created in 1913 by an elite group of international bankers, meeting in a place called Jekyll Island. It was set up to bring stability after a financial panic, a panic caused by those same bankers. Many believe those bankers formed a shadow government that thrives today. We know the feds print our cash, then loan it out at interest, which we pay in taxes. We know it influences interest rates and manipulates the market. We know it's been the source of just about every major crash.
The Fed. I might have known the shadow government would be mixed up in this.
It has to be carried out in as smooth and effective and economical manner as possible.
My fellow citizens, let no one doubt that this is a difficult and dangerous effort, but the greatest danger of all would be to do nothing.
So it might well be that Oswald was indeed a patsy, as he protested at the time. He was obviously in the depository, and his palm print was found on the rifle. But what is far from clear is whether or not he actually pulled the trigger. This could mean Oswald had an accomplice, or that he really was downstairs in the depository canteen, as he claimed, and that someone else fired the fatal shot. It's reported that suspicious characters were seen leaving the depository just after the shooting. So perhaps Oswald was indeed a safe patsy, who was simply framed by highly experienced hitmen, 3 of whom fired the actual 3 shots which killed Kennedy. There is no doubt that Oswald shot and killed police officer Tibbets later that day when making his escape. Maybe he's also guilty of shooting Kennedy. And did he have 1 or more accomplices who have never been identified? The mystery deepens when the shooting of Oswald by Jack Ruby is brought into the equation. Ruby, a small-time nightclub owner, is believed to have had mafia connections. Might he have been ordered to guarantee Oswald's silence by killing him? If so, it seems a remarkable sacrifice, because Ruby would receive a death sentence, later commuted to life when convicted of murder in March 1964. In April 2007, an exhaustive 1,600-page book entitled Reclaiming History, written by U.S. Attorney Vincent Bugliosi, dismisses pretty well all the conspiracy theories and concludes that Oswald acted alone. The following month, researchers writing in the U.S. journal Annals of Applied Statistics argue that it cannot be assumed that Oswald was the only shooter. By analyzing bullets from the same batch apparently used by Oswald, and by applying scientific techniques not available at the time, they suggest the truth might be revealed once and for all if fragments from the original bullets found in Dealey Plaza are re-examined. In later years, a prominent but unnamed mafia leader from Florida claimed responsibility for setting up the Kennedy shooting. He did not live for very long. Certainly, a large number of material witnesses died or disappeared after the assassination. This implies considerable planning and organization. It's even suggested that the actual assassins were probably eliminated, leaving the trail to go cold. It's since been left to conspiracy theorists to scrutinize the available evidence in order to prove the case one way or the other. This was an archetypal, modern assassination, carried out in the full glare of film and television cameras. And with such a charismatic target, the mystery will probably go on forever.